Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Blame It on Marketing podcast, where we are discussing all of the cliche things and comments that people say to us as marketers. And today's episode, we are discussing giving marketing to the intern, which is something that we have all kind of experienced at different size organizations, which is that marketing ends up very often being handed to someone particularly junior. So we're going to talk through maybe the pitfalls of that and maybe what your marketing intern should be doing. And today we are joined by the awesome Lewis, who I'm going to hand over to now to introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Lewis Staples, sales director for a company called StaffCircle. Been in sales and marketing, and I guess a blended approach to the two, for 17 years now.
You don't look that old.
I know, I get that a lot.
Lewis is actually one of the first, main inspirations for the name of this podcast because of a conversation that we had. I think it was back in the summer, so it's extra special to have you here.
Yeah, not because I blamed Ruta for everything.
No. It's all good. A little bit of background on how we came up with the title for this podcast. Well, one, we've heard it happen, but two, there is this, in general, I think in more corporate, less educated companies, when they don't know much about marketing, they often will either try to hire somebody that's really cheap, and we kind of spoke about that on a separate episode, the 35k marketing manager, or they go kind of even more extreme than that. They get someone who's an intern to start doing marketing because, the kids know how to do the social media stuff nowadays. The first thing I would love to discuss is, why have we seen this happen before? So why do leaders try to give away the marketing to the intern? And I guess, what are some of the risks involved if you are going to be doing that?
Yeah, I think from my side, it's been probably about the difference between demand capture and demand generation, and being able to go out with, there's a preconception of what marketing actually is, and there's a lot of levels to marketing, and there's a lot of different components to what makes a successful marketing team. And the other session you did on the 35k marketing manager really summed it up quite well, because especially in small businesses, you find that it's not uncommon for them to have one person in marketing, perhaps somebody who doesn't even have a marketing background, and they might fire out a couple of emails or put a couple of social media posts on, and suddenly they're an influencer. And all of a sudden they're then trying to do the wizardry that is PPC, keywords, content, product marketing. There's so many different components to it. And I feel like from a salesperson's perspective, every other department has recognized that you need different roles for different functions within departments. So within sales, you've got SDRs for prospecting, AEs for closing, solutions consultants for demoing. Even in finance, you've got payroll managers, credit controllers. Procurement, you've got different roles for different functions. But in marketing, it's kind of like, well, we can just have one person and they can do everything. And that's kind of seems to be, it's almost like nobody's really looked at that department and thought, well, actually, it's not too dissimilar to the rest of the business. We need to have the right structure in place.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's a bit of, I agree with your intro as well, Ruta. I think there's a bit of, I'm going to call it naive optimism about giving marketing to someone who's potentially quite junior. It might even be their first job out of uni. And I think those people appear, and maybe it is partly, maybe it's something wrong with us as marketers, that we're really, really optimistic, especially when we first join a company, and we're like, yeah, I can do everything. Of course I can learn everything. I can do all of this. But actually there's sort of no matter who you are, no matter where you're starting in your career, when you are in a more junior position, there is that element of you needing to take time to learn the skills and the craft and the trade. Sort of like what you were saying, Lewis, about your sales department, is that you've got these different functions in sales, and it kind of like, I'm guessing it's kind of more of like a progression ladder, right? So you might start out as an SDR, but then you might move on to becoming an AE or solutions, because you kind of find your niche specialism. And I think that might be where companies go wrong, is they've got this really optimistic person in front of them. It's like, yeah, sure, I can do it all. And actually it then turns out that, as Lewis says, there's like way more to it than that. what are some of the potential kind of like damaging effects on a business, Lewis, for kind of handing the whole marketing stack kind of into the hands of someone who's quite junior?
You're not building evergreen marketing. You're not building a strategy and a plan that can just continuously grow and develop with your company. I think back to your point about why it's like that, and you said about marketing individuals can often be, yeah, I'll do that, yeah, I'll do everything. And I feel like, and remember, I'm in sales, so this is completely unbiased, but I feel like for marketing it's quite challenging in a lot of businesses because they don't really ever get any of the credit, right? Like, your podcast is perfectly named because if something's not going well, marketing get the blame. But if something goes really well from a sales perspective, it's very rare that anybody goes, oh, sales are killing it this month, well done marketing. Like, it's kind of like sales are doing great, so sales are doing great, sales are doing bad, so marketing are doing bad. So I feel like there is that, without being derogatory, that kind of parent-child relationship for a lot of people in marketing, where they're so desperate to please and they're so desperate to kind of get that affirmation that you're doing a good job, they're almost scared to say no because, you know, when things do go wrong, it's marketing's fault, right? That's kind of how a lot of the world, and people will say, oh no, that's not true, but that is a lot of the time what you see kind of posted on social media, and you hear it from companies. And yeah, I feel like the danger of that is back to the question you asked, is kind of, you're not developing a strategy or a plan. You're fixing problems right now, and that can seem to be great, but 3, 6, 9 months down the line, you're kind of relying on that constant manual approach to it.
One of the things that I see a lot where companies have overly junior marketing teams, so it might not even be just the one marketing intern, it might be a whole group or a whole bunch of basically 0 to like 2 years of marketing experience employees, is that they do lots of things. So they do lots of activities and lots of tasks, but if you ever kind of ask them, you know, okay, so how are you going to then turn this into something that will work for you, or, you know, what are the next steps, or if you want them to do more, they all of a sudden are at full capacity because they can't do any more tasks. So essentially, whatever growth you're having is going to be capped to how many tasks those people can do, because they can't step outside of the task themselves to do strategy, for example, or to even be able to turn around and say to whoever's managing them, like, okay, I know we've been doing this set of tasks up till now, but if we want to grow to the next level, we're going to have to stop doing X, Y, Z and change this to these other things, which are obviously going to take time because, one, they're usually far too junior to have that kind of rapport with whoever is managing them. But two, you know, they might not even know. They might be not well mentored, not well coached, so they might not know what that next step looks like. So you get into this like rat race of how many activities can you do, and if you're already maxing out at 20 webinars a month, you can't do more webinars, which means you can't get more leads, you can't close more sales, and there's just this, basically you have to break the wheel to then do something different, and I see that happen quite a lot if the team is too junior, essentially.
To expand on that, what I've noticed in the past is, for me, and I often get into interesting conversations because I feel like I'm quite isolated as a sales leader who loves marketing and is fully aligned with marketing, which is sometimes uncommon. But I feel like the biggest danger between a junior marketer taking kind of ownership and leading the whole function and a more experienced marketer doing so is you naturally have more alignment with a more experienced marketer because they understand typically, and they will challenge CEOs and business owners to say that their targets need to be aligned to the sales targets, right? Like, it's super important that sales and marketing work off revenue-based targets, in my opinion, because then you're both working towards the same goal. It's very easy and this is where the misalignment comes, in my opinion, is you go to somebody who's more junior in marketing and you say, hey, I need you to generate 50 meetings a month or something, or 50 demos a month or whatever. That's all they see in their mind, and that's all they go out to do. So they go out, they get demos, and they don't know, understand, or in some cases even care what happens to those demos.
Yeah, I think that's one of the trickiest things. I mean, and we see this even with maybe marketers that have a particular specialism, is that, you know, that being that revenue focused, having that laser focus, understanding why sales and marketing need to be aligned. Even that is quite rare, I think, in our kind of world of marketers, and potentially it spans across to sales, right, as well, Lewis, because it's not just marketers who don't want to align to sales. It works both ways, I think. And I think with a really definitely, we're both to blame, but with a really junior marketer, I think one of the other things that happens is, and I think, Ruta, this kind of goes back to your point about like just being activity based, focused. Number one, you're not worried about the funnel, but also you're constantly trying to do new things that might be completely irrelevant to your business. So I think one of the classic things at the moment is people being like, oh, our business needs to be on TikTok, or we need to explore like Snapchat. And it's like, but do you though? Is that actually going to draw a straight line through to your revenue? Is it relevant for your audience? How does that feed into your wider business strategy? Is that even where your audience consumes content? And I think that's some of the stuff that we end up missing, is that kind of like strategic thought process that then, like you say, Lewis, feeds back through into sales.
I think you're right. I think and TikTok's a really good example, because I think junior marketers are more likely, or not even just junior marketers, people that have been given the hat without any experience, that are not even marketers at all, but they'll see stuff like, oh, everybody's on Instagram, so that's really good, we need to do Instagram, we need to do YouTube, TikTok, Snapchat. You know, I speak to a lot of businesses where, and I remember especially in my previous role where it was helping build out marketing plans, and they'd be like, well, we're all over LinkedIn. And then when you delve deeper into their ICP, none of their prospect market are on LinkedIn. So what are you doing on LinkedIn? And the answer is always, well, everyone else is. Okay, cool. Well, that doesn't really mean anything. And I think that's more common, again, coming back from that activity base, and let's just do everything and not worry about how we do it.
And to put a positive spin on it, I absolutely love people who are just open to just shouting out whatever ideas they have. I think every single team needs those people, and you need to nurture those people, because they will give you a fresh look into something that, you know, us kind of boring old farts in B2B don't have anymore. But they can't just be by themselves. That's when it doesn't work. They need the guidance and refinement, and then the best of the both worlds basically come together.
And I think that's why it's important about not putting interns and up and coming people who typically, they are a lot more creative, right? Like, I will speak to fresh out the box salespeople, and they will come up with these wild, crazy ideas that people who have been in the game for a long time just don't have the appetite to be that creative anymore, and we'll try them, and sometimes they work, sometimes they won't. But I feel like the danger in a wider space for long term is too many junior marketers are becoming crushed because they're not in the right nurturing environment. You know, Emma alluded back to like the natural progression in a sales team structure, and in a lot of cases there isn't that. You know, like, you come in as an SDR in sales and you're shadowing and learning off a more experienced account executive, whereas in a lot of cases you come in as a kind of, 1 minute you're a marketing intern, and the next minute you're an SEO, and then Wednesday you come in and you're doing keywords and all this kind of stuff. You don't have an ability or an opportunity to learn and master your craft, and I think that's kind of where the downfall is.
Agreed. If you're a junior marketer listening, get yourself into a team of, I want to say 5 to 15 people for your first few jobs. You're going to learn a lot faster, do a lot more stuff than if you're by yourself or even with one other person, because it's easier that way. That's at least what my experience was as well, and I absolutely loved it. I don't know about you, actually.
I was always on my own, which is probably to my downfall. Well, I said to you, because I started out doing marketing sort of really in the charity sector alongside doing other jobs. And when I came across to work with Ruta, I remember saying, like, I do all this marketing stuff and I have no idea. Ruta's saying all these amazing words at me about stuff. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. but I know how to do everything she's talking about, but I don't know the language. I don't know any of that stuff. And it's literally because I'd learn everything off my own back. And that's actually actually, when I think about it, not that this is a therapy session, but was actually very detrimental to my career to not have someone more senior to refer back to from a marketing perspective, because I didn't learn any of this stuff until I was basically, I mean, God, when I started working with you, Ruta, I was already 30 years old. So it's like, you know, it is quite damaging to your career. Like, you could potentially be setting yourself back in terms of like development and also potentially salary, just by nature of the fact that you've gone for jobs where, I had that naive optimism where I was like, yeah, I can do everything. Of course I can. And then actually it turns out, no, I can't. And now I'm a lot older and wiser. I realise that's a good thing, not a bad thing.
The other potentially damaging effect that comes to my mind when it comes to having somebody too junior do all of the marketing roles, basically, is there are sometimes decisions that you need to make with experience and that you can't necessarily fumble through, or at least make it with, you know, an educated guess. One of those things that I think of a lot is PPC. It's somewhere where you can spend a lot of money very fast and do nothing good if you don't do it well. So there will be points where the marketing you can do is very much limited by how good of a decision you'll be able to make, and that's where you'll probably need to refer to someone again as well, instead of just going with it, because you can make some very expensive mistakes, and as a junior person you'll absolutely be taking the fall for them usually, so I don't recommend doing that.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing for me for making sure that you've got the right people in the right places, is having the confidence to go and ask for that help when you're making those decisions is something that, again, coming back to that, and again, not being derogatory, that parent-child relationship, like, I know that I've spoken to people who've had a fear of asking for help because they don't want to seem like they can't do it and they can't make that decision, whereas the more experienced people in roles, they've gone through enough to know when they do need to ask for that external support.
I think one of the things that happens is there is also, like, I think that goes back to the organisations that you end up working for as a junior person. And I know this is my experience, is that if you don't have the psychological safety in your organisation to be able to put your hand up and say, I actually don't know, then as a junior person, that's incredibly difficult. And also as a junior person, you want to please, you want to get promoted, you want to show that you're doing a good job, all of those kind of things that then feed into that. Because you don't want to say, I can't do this stuff. Lewis, like, I'm interested in your perspective on that.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like you need to vet the companies that you're speaking to. You're absolutely right. Like, you need to understand, what am I getting into here? And I'd be asking about things like, what's the current infrastructure? What are the expectations? What's the support? What's the learning and development opportunities? When I was listening to your last session on the 35k marketing manager, I was thinking to myself, if you get offered that, run, because they're going to want a lot for a very little amount. And it's about having the confidence. If you are, you know, being an intern and being a junior marketer isn't a bad thing. It's about, you know, making sure that you're joining the right company. And you know, it kind of goes back to Ruta's point about who can you learn from, right? When I was working with Ruta, we were doing a lot of experiments, and for me, I often think, well, if you were junior in marketing, how much would you know about what's the right amount of time, what's the right amount of commitment to put into these experiments, what results should I be expecting, what's a good kind of return on investment, all of these things. And I think this is why it's really important to understand that you're joining companies that give you that infrastructure that's there to learn, develop and grow, and you're getting the right framework in place. Yeah.
I think in general, if somebody's hiring a marketing intern and that's the only marketing intern that they have, it's a red flag. So if you're ever in an interview and that's the deal, like, you know, take it if you really need it. But if you've got better options with other people, I would probably lean to those ones.
Yeah. I'd be on LinkedIn, search the company and just type in marketing and see how many people in that company currently situate within the marketing department. And if they're hiring for a marketing intern and there's like no one else in the marketing company, I'd be looking for another job somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. I would even say, even if it's a small business where you've got because I've seen this happen more potentially in B2C organizations, where you've got like a small business who are like, no, just come and do our social media marketing intern and we'll pay you £10 an hour to run an Instagram account for like a massive B2C company. And again, yeah, run for the hills. That's not, even though it's an exciting proposition, it's fun, it seems like it's going to be fun. I think what's going to end up happening is you're going to like potentially set yourself back. You're not going to have that guidance, you're not going to have that support. And also then what's going to happen is if that business relies on, say, like Instagram, for example, as its revenue generating channel, and then the revenue drops because the stuff you're doing, you're going to get the blame. So don't do it.
You know, in a hopeful approach that there's some people in sales will watch this, I think there's a huge onus on sales leaders to offer support and guidance for not just the interns, but the whole of marketing. Like the alignment between the two departments is genuinely life or death for any business. And I think it's super critical for sales leaders to understand that your team cannot survive without marketing. Like, just as marketing can't, you know, they wouldn't survive without sales. We feed off each other, and we have to work together. And I think that when I see sales leaders kind of bashing junior or experienced marketeers, it's concerning on a wider scale, because you need them. You should be encouraging them, dedicating time to support their initiatives, supporting the campaigns, doing what you can to kind of make sure you're supporting it, to grow, especially the interns, to grow them and develop them, because ultimately they're going to be putting food on the table for your sales team.
Very much agreed. So, what should a marketing intern be doing if we do have one, given all the things that we said they probably shouldn't be doing or won't be good at doing?
For me, I think, and please challenge me on this, you have both forgotten more about marketing than I know, but for me, I feel like it's, having worked in aspects of marketing, there's so many different elements to it. I feel like I would be, if I was a marketing intern, I'd be deciding what is the craft I want to master, and I would focus on that one element, and I would be looking to surround myself with people who are successful and have done well in that element of marketing, and be disciplined to not get distracted from what I've chosen as my elected craft, be that kind of SEO or kind of anything else like that. That's what I feel I would be doing.
I'm gonna disagree. I'm gonna say that you should be doing the opposite of what Lewis said. It depends on your personality, I think. No, it depends on your personality and the kind of how you work better. For some people, focusing down is the only way that they enjoy work and that they can really feel like they're making an impact. I'm talking from my own personal experience. I'm a generalist. I love variety. So the one thing as a super junior person that, in my opinion, you should do at least for a little while is just test everything. See what you like, see what you don't like, try work with every specialist in your team and kind of almost shadow them and support them. And then if you do find a specialism that you love, definitely double down. And if you don't, it's okay. You'll be one of us. And that's totally cool.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Ruta. I think it's about basically figuring out what it is that you like to do. That's your job as the intern. You're obviously there to support the team, but you're also there to be developed. That's the primary reason for having interns in a business, is to grow your talent pool internally, right? So that's why you get interns in. That's why you hire junior people, because you want to grow and develop them and turn them into amazing superstars, because all the potential's there. So I think you've got to try everything and learn and spend as much time with those experts, as Ruta said, as possible, and take every opportunity that you can to try stuff out. And then I think, like you said, Lewis, then if you want to double down and you want to try and be a specialist, then of course, you should then do that. But I think a lot of us in marketing, even if you do have a specialism, we end up doing a bit of generalist stuff anyway. What do we think businesses should be looking for to kind of ensure that they've got the kind of right marketing dream team to support someone junior? At what point in your kind of like business, I guess it's like what point in your business's growth should you even be looking to bring in more junior people?
I think from personal experience, you have to be at the stage where your marketing structure and plan is relatively established and is delivering on a consistent basis. I think you want to set the right environment so that you can grow and nurture the future of marketing with interns. And I think bringing them in too early can damage that quite considerably. There's a lot of pressure put on them if you're in a kind of results or die stage as a company. I think there's probably merit in bringing them in as you're working through the progress of really establishing your plan, because I feel like they might be able to gain a lot of insight and knowledge from that. But I think you should definitely be in a position personally where you're delivering consistent results.
I back that. I think if at any point you as a team feel under-resourced in manpower, you shouldn't be bringing on a junior, because what that typically does is it means that somebody more senior will have to start managing them, which means they will have even less hours to do the important execution work that they've been doing to then support a junior person to kind of, upskill them and get them to a level. So if at any point you still feel like your hands are tied and you are human under-resourced, hire as senior as possible in every role. And once you feel like you're not, basically running from one thing to the next, then think about getting someone junior and upskilling them, and then there'll obviously be a benefit to the team.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think it's, when you think about the different people that you have in your team, you have senior people in your team so that you can kind of almost capacity build for the future. So you have senior people there to, as you say, like drive revenue, drive results, make sure that business is ticking along nicely. And then you bring those junior people in as a way of, nurturing new talent, and the senior people are helping to build capacity by upskilling those junior people. If people haven't got capacity now, they're not going to have capacity to upskill junior people, are they?
It's one of the worst things to do to a efficient and well functioning like mid to senior level marketer, is to dump somebody to manage when they don't have the time to be finishing up their work in the first place. It's horrific. As much as everyone wants to be a manager before they're a manager, it's an absolutely horrific thing to do.
That's another podcast episode talking about how to utilize the specialisms rather than just hiring more people. Get some specialists in, guys.
That's as well though where you get the it starts impacting results, because when you get to that stage where, like Ruta is saying, you're kind of time strapped, you no longer have time to execute as effectively as you were because you've hired somebody too junior. You'll find subconsciously, because we're all human, you're delegating more to that junior person way ahead of when they're ready. Lo and behold, results drop, and all of a sudden everybody's blaming marketing again. And you've gone from being a really well-established oiled machine that's working and heading in the right direction to taking a knockback because, and let's be honest, because they've gone for somebody who's slightly cheaper. In the main is often the reason why. Yeah,
it's not a secret weapon. Like, hiring more junior people is probably not the solution to your problems in marketing ever.
Should we maybe, I was just going to say, if we actually talked about senior leaders so people outside of sales and marketing, and their kind of like expectations of not just junior people, but I guess marketing in general, is that something maybe we should talk about?
For me, it comes to the point around what I mentioned near the beginning about the allocation of praise and blame. I think a senior leader, business owners, CEOs should be looking at their sales and marketing teams as a unit and not in isolation. They are the forefront of revenue driving, and when it comes to expectations, I genuinely do believe that those expectations should be shared. There is you have to work as a one department essentially in order to deliver on it. And I think the expectation of from a CEO or business owners is that it needs to be realistic, and they need to kind of look at it very high level and not get too much in the weeds. I think that's where people start slipping up, is when they start going, like, people that don't understand marketing get very granular in kind of investigating it, and they don't understand the information they're reading.
Oh, I could talk for days about this. In terms of senior leaders and their expectations of whether it's junior or senior marketing people, I think letting the team itself dictate the expectations, not in a sense of like, oh, we're going to be doing this and you can't ask me for anything else, but kind of doing that work collaboratively and figuring out what the expectations will be is a much better way to go around it, instead of just, dumping stuff on them. Because again, marketers tend to be more people pleasing and more kind of externally motivated than maybe other professions might be. So there'll be people that will just take things on and then basically sweat their asses off for a year trying to make it happen, and it's not going to happen, but they didn't want to tell you it's not going to happen because they didn't want to disappoint you. But ultimately you'll end up disappointed anyway, because one person can't like mill down a mountain. I don't know what that saying was. So kind of working on the expectations collaboratively. Mill down a mountain? I don't know. Working on the expectations collaboratively and making sure that both parties are comfortable, and I guess being able to have that conversation and be comfortable, and setting up the right environment is going to be key as well.
I think the only thing I would add as well is, I was just thinking about and what I meant by kind of aligning the two departments from expectations is, and this is where I'll get crucified by everyone in sales, but there's a common thing that you look at what your business is closing and you judge based on that whether or not you need more leads. And it's always kind of the natural flow is, oh, we need more leads, so we're going to go to marketing and we're going to hammer them down to get more leads. Whereas for me, and when I took over this role, the first thing I looked at was, well, what's our conversions like on the leads we're getting? And we've put the processes in place over the last 3 months to double our conversions at the different stages. So we're generating double the revenue out of the same amount of leads, right? Because whilst we have, as all businesses, we have improvements that can be made in marketing, we have improvements that can be made in sales too. So I feel like the message to CEOs and business owners in that sense is, don't always assume that if you have a revenue issue or you have a kind of net new customers being won, doesn't always mean the problem and the bottleneck is in marketing. It's really important to look at the whole funnel and understand where other improvements can be made.
Thank you everybody so much for listening. If you have anything to input to the points we've made, if you are an intern working in marketing, please sound off. We would love to hear it. Thank you, Lewis, for joining us. It's been a pleasure. And thank you for inspiring what I think is a quite clever name for this podcast, if I dare say so myself. And we hope to see you all very soon.